Hi, folks, and welcome to our New Hill podcast. Today, we are joined by Irish League royalty, Mr. Sean Moore. Sean, very welcome.
Michael, thank you very much for inviting me on here.
Pleasure. I'm glad to have a man of your stature and career. We had Billy Joe Burns on there a few episodes ago, but I think Billy's probably second now in the Irish League run on the players.
God,
He may disagree.
Certainly not in my opinion. He's one of my favourites of all time.
Just before we get into it, you actually done on Billy Joe's testimonial. You done the comp on it with Ryan Giggs.
Giggsy now, I call
Giggsy, yeah, our mate Giggsy, yeah. Our Ryan. But I actually said to Billy, I thought you had done that on the side as a part-time role. I thought.
God, do you know what that was? I was so nervous, and I realised how difficult it is to stand up, particularly in front of an audience, a live audience, and do that. But he was great. And it was a fitting moment for Billy Joe because what a player he is.
Oh, not half. No, he because he had said about obviously it was coming up and he was trying to arrange a game. And I said we'll try and go big and give you the send off that you deserve. But the whole day was very good. The match was good, but the Q&A upstairs was brilliant. So fair play. It was really well put together. Sean, so what we do normally with our guests, we always like to go back to the start, sort of growing up in Belfast and surrounding areas, and how obviously you get into football and how football looked back in the sort of 80s, early 90s, and when you were playing. So tell me, when did you first, silly question, but when did you first sort of get kicking ball? When did you start enjoying football and liking football, your first memories of it?
I was always very sporty, but my dad comes from a Gaelic background, and big fan of hurling, and Sarsfield was my first club, and then obviously the school. I went to Good Shepherd Primary School and was very involved in sport and football, and we were a great school in that we had opportunity for everything. We had a handball team, with a hurling team, with an athletics team, with soccer, with everything. And that's testament to the staff that were there that provided that opportunity for us. But I was very active, and I played for Sarsfields from my dad would have took teams, and I'd have been there when he was coaching, probably from about 4 or 5. And then there was a team called Belfast Youth in terms of soccer and football, and that was organised by a man called John Flood, who was originally with Celtic Boys, and Victor McCracken, who was with St Andrews. Okay. And I think they came together after I think a Holland tournament, and they formed Belfast Youth, and it was a cross-community football club, and that was probably when I was about 8. Okay. And I stayed there until I was probably a wee bit younger actually. And then I went to St Andrews when I was 11, and played for St Andrews with Harry McKee, who was the manager there. We had a really strong side, and we won Champions of Champions, which was the Moss tournament at the time.
Absolutely.
And I loved it there, and I loved sport. I loved school. I loved school because I loved sport.
Yeah. Helps.
And from Good Shepherd, I went to LaSalle, and again LaSalle, such a huge reputation and history of.
Beat us in the final of a Belfast Schools Cup in first year. Still haven't forgiven them.
Yeah, and they beat. And the thing was, at that time they beat many. Yeah. But we had such good sort of mentors at the time, even from primary school. Jim Lee, Brian McAlay, moving into LaSalle, and I don't want to name people because in case I'm bound to miss people out. But there were my mentors at that time, Alistair McGilligan, Paul O'Gara, Danny Fulton, Sean McGordy, magnificent people, and then at the end you'd Stephen Ramsey and Brendan McCarry, and they were just wonderful people who just dedicated
were
so
these
much.
People you went to school with, or teachers, or
well, they were teachers. They were teachers, and they just provide that opportunity. And when I always think about sports teams and the teams that I played for Belfast Youth, played for Sarsfield was always my Gaelic club. It's a bit different from the soccer. You don't really bounce. Some do, but you don't really move from Gaelic club to Gaelic club. But soccer, I sort of did move. I started off at Belfast Youth, and then I sort of progressed and made that step to St Andrews, and that was a step up. Belfast Youth was brilliant, and I met many really good friends. St Andrews was a wee step up, and it was a team that had a lot of talent at that age and that profile. But even you look at this New Hill, I didn't really have much, competition against New Hill. New Hill were a different league. We were Lisburn League. But I always think about people who dedicate their time and dedicate their life to providing those opportunities for young people. And it's very, very difficult to be critical
Mm,
of a volunteer who is given their time to do things right
mhm.
and you will healthily and safely provide opportunities for young
Mhm.
people. Sometimes they get it wrong.
Yeah, yeah,
You
definitely.
know, they make mistakes, but they're giving their time, they're giving their effort, and they're providing opportunities. And for young lads like myself, I grew up in West Belfast and Poglass. Went to school in West Belfast. Gaelic Club's West Belfast. My mum's from Ballymurphy Road. My dad's from Beachmount. You know, I am, as much as I'm not in West
Wednesday.
Belfast now,
West.
I am absolutely, you know, a proud Westie.
Yeah, yeah.
Probably not in the West enough anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
I left my wife into town last night and I was driving up to get the boys ice cream and I went to go to Fosco's. It's gone.
Oh, it's Glow, yeah.
Fosco's is gone. Yeah. But I loved West Belfast,
Yeah.
and for the people that, you know, that Paddy McStravick's, Jerry McKee's, the Jackie Maxwell's, the John Flood's, freaking McCracken's at the time, the Joe Kincaids, you know, and you know, they gave up so much to provide
Heroes, aren't they,
opportunity.
really?
They really are. Selfless people who give up so much to provide opportunities for young people like ourselves just to take part in sport.
Mhm.
And my opinion, which will never ever change, you know, sport is the biggest outlet for young people to make good, positive choices
Totally
to
agree.
hopefully steer them in a good direction in
Mhm.
life. And they did that. They
Yeah.
provided that opportunity. They provided that platform.
I think too, not only did they do that, provide the platform, and provide the clubs and the time, but it was the time of our sort of history that they were doing that, and they were doing it through a time where this place was divided, essentially. Like we always talk about Paddy. Paddy started Newhill '73, which was right through the midst of the severe
Mhm.
troubles, and he was still going and putting people out of bed and putting people out of bars to go and play football. You know, and people don't. Sometimes they don't appreciate the sort of lasting work that they do. Um, I mean, you're just saying there about volunteers. I know some of our parents, and the problem with parents is, and I do get it sometimes from their point of view. They think their wee Paddy and their wee Billy should play every game. They think their wee Paddy and their wee Billy should be taking free kicks, should be taking corners. And sometimes they'll come if their child hasn't played or whatever, or maybe they think that the coaching's doing wrong. And like we always say to them, these are volunteers. These lads aren't getting paid to do this. And like we encourage our, you know, not even from a point of view where we're trying to be, you know, sarcastic with them, but we encourage them. If you think you can input something into this, come and give us a hand. You know, we're crying out for coaches, like, but our volunteers, from committee to coaches, you know, as you said, they're unsung heroes of clubs, and every club about the road, as you say, Jackie Maxwell, Plunkett, Billy McKee not Billy McKee,
Jeremy Key.
Jeremy McKee at the Mac and stuff. You know, it's just it's incredible the work they go through, and it gives us more so you and other lads who've been on the play, obviously at a really good level of football. Like it gives you that grounding and platform to go and do it, which is fantastic.
Well, it does because we live in a society now where there is so much opportunity
Yeah,
for everything,
yeah,
and that opportunity isn't always positive opportunity.
yeah.
You know, there's a lot of negativity and concern and risk taking behaviours that exist in the world, and those people are providing that opportunity to come away from that.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I always remember the Sunday League was being run in Falls Park, and it was constantly being destroyed because the
Yeah.
joyriders were going on to it, and that's the society and the world
Mm.
that we lived in. And I was very fortunate in that, you know, I had your parents that were very, very supportive constantly. I had a perfect childhood, I really did, and I can't speak, you know, I can never do my parents justice for what
Yeah.
they did for us and did for me. But I was very open from a young age. I played for Belfast Youth cross community team. You engaging and merging with people from backgrounds that probably weren't familiar to me,
I
weren't
like it.
familiar to my parents.
Yeah, yeah.
But they encouraged that. You know, I went to St Andrews, went to Belfast Youth, St Andrews, and you're meeting people who have a different background, who wear a jersey with a different emblem, which
Yeah,
is that, you know, wow, Rangers, Celtic. You know, I was never a Celtic fan. You know, I was
yeah,
never a Rangers fan, but that was the taboo.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
I know what you mean.
Rangers, you're a Protestant, Celtic, you're a Catholic,
Yeah, yeah.
and then you come together and you realise that, you know what, we're not that much different.
I'm so glad you said that. Actually, I have some really good. My mum's partner is a Protestant, and I have a couple of really really close friends, who are Protestants. They're at my wedding, and it would be some of my most trusting people who I would confide in. And as you say, the backgrounds, when you line the backgrounds, we probably on paper have no right to be friends. But then when you delve into it, we're so alike, it's incredible. There's no
There's no
real
difference. There isn't
really.
difference.
It's incredible.
We grew up in an area where there has been so much discontent, and that has happened historically for a long period of time that I'll not get into because I'm not educated enough to give that. But I can only give my own perspective, and that was that we do grow up in an area where there was that divide. Still is for many people who still promote that. But we have parents that are encouraging it, encouraging us to mix and share experiences and share cultures and accept cultures for what they are. One person that enjoys one thing is wonderful, and we can all enjoy things together. And I had a really brilliant upbringing where I can go into any environment in any society and I can feel comfortable. Regardless of who I'm interacting with. And that comes from my background.
I think too. I think like we often say too. I think you're a product of your environment. I think if you're brought up in a particular environment, there's a good chance you will go down that particular road. If you're brought up in a different environment, like you're saying, your parents and encouraged to go and play for the best football team, irrelevant of who was coaching, irrelevant of religion. It was just go and play for the best football team, which St Andrews would have been at that time, which I think is really good. It is changing. I think definitely that whole stigma and that whole, I have, as I say, I've got some really good Protestant friends where 20, 25 years ago probably would have been unheard of. So I do think it's changing. I think a lot of the younger generation, even the generation coming in behind me, don't really care anymore.
No,
I don't think they really care. Don't get me wrong. You're going to get minorities on either side that do care, and they'll still cling on to that. But the vast majority of the younger generation, they just want a good education. They want to play sport. They want to have friends. They want to go for a drink, and the rest of that nonsense that happened is gone.
That's it. It's
really.
growth, and that's why my mind will never change. Where sport is the greatest vehicle to drive that change. In my opinion, will never change on that.
I totally agree with you on that. So touching on we've obviously touched on St Andrews, and what age were you playing at St Andrews too? What age?
I played for St Andrews from I was 11 to under 14, and like all young people do, they go through spells of where things is great and sport's the best thing in the world, and then there'll be times where it's probably not as fun, as enjoyable, and I went through that spell too. When I was younger, was quite quick and quite light, so I always played in the wing or played centre forward.
Some things haven't changed.
But I always remember a time in St Andrews where, and this is always you're mindful of, parents want everybody, their child, to play every single week, and that old adage, your own duck's a swan, and I get it, and I get the parents want their kids to play every single week, and I know that a lot of coaches are very good in that and working that out and facilitating game time. But it's difficult for coaches because not everybody can play every single week, and yes, they have to do that fairly. But there has to be a process of where there has to be that level of trust if it's done right, and if it's done well with coaches and with parents, there's too many voices on a sideline.
I agree.
And that can be counterproductive because you've got young people that are trying to navigate and make, hundreds of decisions, thousands of decisions, on a given day in a game of football, and you've got parents that are giving the direction, you've coaches that are giving the direction, you've got teammates that are giving direction, they're trying to navigate their own way on a football field and where they are, and that can be difficult, and that can be very confusing for young people. But that's the strength and the beauty of communication, where people come together and talk and chat things out and have systems in place where everybody can.
There was always parents that would have went to Tiernan's game, so he's now senior, so a lot of the mummies don't go anymore. But there was some of the conversations we had on the sideline, and I would have played a wee bit of football, nothing at any particular level, but they understood it a wee bit better than some of the parents, and you hear some of the mummies shouting on, and kind of like, maybe she should shut up. She's shooting the wrong instructions.
But we're all experts.
Yeah,
we're all
exactly.
experts. I'm very fortunate that sometimes I do some work for the BBC and I co-commentate on games, and we're all experts.
Yeah.
But that's the beauty of the game, is
Yeah,
that we
yeah.
can all
It's all
we can all
opinions.
be experts, because it is opinion, and,
It's all
one
opinions.
opinion will change. One opinion you'll see in top level football, if there is a right way to play. I don't think there is a right way to
Yeah.
play. At that level, the right way to play is a way to play where you win games.
Wins, yeah.
I know
Yeah.
that's very different in
Styles, isn't it, really?
grassroots football, and that's styles. People love the Pep Guardiola. Now people hate the Pep Guardiola style of
Yeah.
football.
Yeah, it's
And
boring.
that's the way football goes.
Yeah.
Football will have these transitions to where there is a style and there is a way, but ultimately at the higher levels of the game, it's a results-driven business. When
Absolutely.
we're talking about kids and grassroots, it's the development phase,
Yeah.
and it's totally different. But
Yeah.
we're all experts. We all have the right to have an opinion, but there's a way of giving that opinion.
Yeah, I think they articulate that across to them as a way, some of the parents, and not just mummies, some daddies, and they're like goldering at the kids. Some of these kids, like when Tiernan was playing, was only 10, 11 year old. And I always think it's, and I'm not a coach, don't claim to be, but I always think it's very difficult to try and, like I seen Tiernan playing when he was 5, 6, 7, and you had coaches trying to give them tactics. I was like, guys, it's not getting into them. They're 6, they're 7. There's one of the kids actually asked him in the middle of a team talk, do you have an Xbox? To the coach, their mind is somewhere else. And I always be of the opinion, rightly or wrongly, that just give them a football and let them, as you say, navigate their way through. And then maybe when they start getting 10, 12, 14, then start encouraging them to, work on shape and tactics and all those things. But
Yeah.
I just think sometimes at that level of football and at that age of football, it gets overcomplicated. Just let them play football and it'll come to them eventually.
There'll always be direction, and there has
Yeah.
to be direction, because young people make mistakes, and sometimes they learn it, sometimes they don't have the awareness
Mhm.
to know. There'll always be direction. The difficulty is that the level of detail in that direction, and that has to come, and drip fed over a period of time.
Yeah.
So when they're really young, too much information.
Yeah, it just overloads them.
Yeah, and I say that from a point, from a teacher perspective. From a coaching perspective, I probably don't have that experience, because I take school teams. I'm not one of these volunteers that is dedicated so much of their lives into giving those opportunities for kids. So I'm very mindful that they are just trying their best.
Yeah.
And as long as it's keeping everybody safe and healthy, then
That's the main thing.
Good on you.
Yeah, and the kids are playing. That's the good thing. Yeah. And then obviously after St Andrews, you were there 14, and then did you make the move then to?
Sorry, I didn't even get to finish. I got sidetracked. When I was at St Andrews, I became a spell where I was always being taken off, and I came to the point when the substitute was being made, I used to just walk off.
You knew it was you.
I knew it was me, and that was very, very impactful.
Yeah.
And I lost a bit of an enjoyment and a buzz and a love for the game. But it was at that stage where I got 2 years under 14, because the dates changed. Because it used to be, the calendar used to go from July to June.
That's right.
And then it changed from January to December. So I got 2 years under 14. So I left St Andrews, and I was training with Celtic boys for a period of time. And then I wanted to stay in the Lisburn League, and I went to Lisburn Youth. And that was really good for me.
They had a good side, I can remember.
But did have a good side. Sammy Clingan was there. There was a lot of boys in the West came in and played for that Lisburn Youth team. Sammy Clingan was there. I always remember, Sammy Clingan he was always a very, very talented footballer.
Yeah.
But he benefited like I did in that he had 2 years under 14, and he went from here to here. And I remember, scouts coming the sideline wanting to see Sammy, and just looking and saying which one's Clingan. They were pointing to Clingan, and they were just walking away. And Sammy was at that club next week for a trial.
Yeah.
And that's the way it was for Sammy. But it was a good team, it was a good club. And then I went to Shankill Boys, and again it was a reconnection from Belfast Youth and St Andrews. I became very friendly with a guy, Johnny Sims, who's no longer with us. Johnny passed away, quite a long time ago. But we went right through. We had Belfast Youth, we went to St Andrews together, then we went to Shankill, then we went to Glentoran. And Johnny was in Highfield, and our families became very close. And this was, 19 sport bringing families together. 1994, 1998, the ceasefire, the Good Friday Agreement. Don, his dad, used to come over and pick me up to bring me over into those areas. And so when I'll never say I was directly impacted out of troubles, but we were.
Yeah.
But we were, because it was still a very dangerous and worrying time. But that's what people did through sport, just to give kids the opportunity to try and change something. To try and just say, listen, we're not different.
Yeah.
This is sport. Go and play, interact with people that are the same as yourselves. And that's the power and beauty of it all.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. It's, as I say, I keep going back to it, where we would have friends and we go out and we all like a beer, we all like golf, we all like the football, We all, we like playing cards. We are so aligned as human beings. It's incredible.
Yeah.
There was a podcast on there not too long back, and I can't remember who said it, but the comment he made was, we have, we, he was talking about him and his family as Catholics have more in common with a working class family on the Shankill Road than a Catholic on the Malone Road. He says we're so aligned, it's incredible. We all like the same things. We like going and playing snooker or having a beer or whatever, which is fantastic. And thankfully, them conversations are coming less and less now. They're just, we're people.
Yeah.
It's not, oh, he's a Catholic or he's a Protestant. It's irrelevant now, really.
No,
And then you went to Glentoran from Shankill United. Did you get scouted to go to Glentoran from there? How did that happen?
it was coming to that stage when there was no academies.
Right.
Now you'll see that Linfield have an academy,
Mhm.
Glentoran have academy, right through from maybe 6 right up to
Mhm.
the senior team. That didn't exist at the time. St Andrews at that time had an affiliation with Linfield. Shankill, some boys would have went to Linfield. I had the opportunity to go to Glentoran, and I went to Glentoran. There was a coach at the time, Stephen Laurie, who was super, and he changed where I played. I would have played on the right side, right midfield, right back, and he moved me as a sweeper.
Right, okay.
So I started playing centrally, and I loved it. And my sort of confidence just started soaring, just because somebody had a really good strength and belief in me. And I loved it at Glentoran. Really good club,
Yeah.
brilliant club. Looked after me so well, and I made the transition from the 16s into the 18s of Davy Taylor, and then into Johnny Jamison and Jordy Bowden at the reserves, and then was fortunate enough to make that progression into the first team. And I always remember we used to have a do in the Park Avenue Hotel, and it used to be the whole club. And the whole club at that time, it was 15s, 16s, 18s, reserves, and then the first team. But it was tiered at a table, so we were in the Park Avenue, and the 16s were at the back, and then the 18s, and then the first team were all at the front. And I always remember Roy Colley standing up saying, your goal is, to make it to this front table, the front table. And it always stuck with me. I always remembered. Obviously, people then had other opportunities to go to England or Scotland or different career paths, but I always remembered. And I was never an Irish League fan, because I grew up in West Belfast, and I was Gaelic football. And to be fair, Belfast Youth, when I was there, a lot of the young boys from East Belfast would have loved, going to watch the Glens. I always remember their big day was after the football. They went to Conswater, and then they went to the Oval, and they watched Glentoran, and that was probably the biggest club that I knew at the time. Went to a couple of Clinville games. I remember Clinville win the league.
Was it 98? Did they win the?
Yeah, I think about that. You're putting us when they did.
I don't know.
But I remember being there, and Barry Flynn and my uncle Liam, they brought me to that game. And I remembered, but I was never a big Clinville fan. I was never a fan of anybody.
Yeah.
But that was my first real introduction to Irish League football.
Yeah.
And then I just gradually
You've done
made the progress, and then I made my debut in 2002. Roy Coyle was the manager, and that was a good session.
Sweeper or left back? Or?
No, I would have played right back.
Right back.
I was never a big dominant centre half. I was 5'10", probably about 11 stone, between 10 and a half and 11 and a half stone at that time. So they certainly wouldn't have trusted me. Not at that time, when the game was a lot more physical and players were a lot stronger.
Yeah.
So I played fullback, and I played a County Antrim Shield game against Glebe Rangers, and that was my first introduction to first team football.
How'd you do? How was your debut?
Ran the show. I used to say it all the time.
I don't doubt it.
No, I didn't. I played fullback, and I loved it. We won quite comfortably. But I probably did run the show, but I was never the type. I'm joking. I was never the type that would have went in and knocked managers' doors and saying, So I got that opportunity in 2002. It was probably 5 months later before I got another sniff at the first team.
Really?
But I was always in the round it.
Right. Okay.
But at the time, the reserve teams were very, very strong.
Yeah.
So our reserve team at Glentoran, sometimes they didn't play because you had 5 or 6 first teamers dropping down, and then they always took priority to start, and then they dropped out. And I always remember playing a Steel and Sons Cup game against Donegal Celtic at Donegal Celtic, and I believe Raymond Krangle was the referee. Now, I didn't start the game because there were so many first teamers came down, but I came on after about 15 minutes, and I played well. And Raymond Krangle was the referee, and he gave a penalty, and Donegal Celtic put us out of the Steel and Sons Cup,
right, okay.
And it wasn't a penalty.
That sounds about right. But
yeah. So don't hold the grudge. Don't hold the grudge. So, but I remember from that there, then I got further opportunities.
Yeah.
I played quite well there because they were Donegal Celtic were a club that were on the up. But we had a really good, strong reserve team. And then, but it probably took me to 2000, from 2002 making my debut, 2004, 2005 was the season that I really get in.
Really
So between 2002 and 2004, I probably made, a handful of appearances.
Yeah.
And then I got an opportunity. We were supposed to play the Stephen Sons Cup final. And a first team player get injured. And I remember Roy Coyle pulled me and says to me, right, there's good news and there's bad news. The bad news is you're not going to play on Christmas Day, which was the Stephen Sons Cup final. But the good news is you're going to play on Boxing Day, which was the big 2 Boxing Day fixture. And it was mega. It was huge.
It's like the El Clasico, wasn't it?
so yeah, it was. And the rivalry, they hated each other.
Yeah.
The fans just, there was so much tension and, they just a really good atmosphere. And health and safety wasn't as big as it was now.
Yeah,
so the attendances and the fixtures were a lot bigger and the atmospheres were a lot rowdier and noisier. And so I got to play the Boxing Day game, and then that was me. And we went on a run and we won the league that year.
Brilliant.
And that was the first league win, and you become a wee bit spoiled because you think that the success happens. And with good reserve teams, so we would have won George Wilson Cups. We were competing in Stephen Sons Cups, and you win the league, and you go, God, this is easy. You win this every year.
It's funny. So when I had Billy Joe on the podcast, I was saying to Billy Joe, I'm going to ask you the same question. Billy's very modest, as you know, and so are you, to be fair. But Billy's very, very modest. And I had said to Billy, when you hit 16, 18, 20, 22, was there a time where you thought, I'm actually pretty handy at this, I'm good at this? Was there a time, in your career, as you were going from the 18s to the reserves to the first team, thinking, you're joking there saying I ran the show, but thinking when you were playing the ball, I'm better than most of these, I am a really good player? Or does that just not come into you, or does it come into you, you just don't like saying it? Or
it's not that I think you're better than everybody.
Yeah.
You just have confidence.
Yeah, you think I'm good at this game.
Self-confidence. People ask who's the best player that ever played, or what's, you get the, the Nicky Butts, the Paul Scholes, the Gary Neville's talking about their generation, and everybody's generation will be the best generation
of course,
of ever.
Yeah.
So it's not that you think you're better than people, but you have that self-confidence that when you go through the games where you just feel, I'm equipped, I'm prepared, I am ready. Just to deal with whatever there is.
It's not like you're feeling imposter syndrome where I should be. You almost feel as good as them or better.
Yeah.
You feel like you deserve to be there.
And particularly in that later stages, I would never have went and knocked on Roy Coyle's door if I wasn't playing. If he dropped me, he dropped me. I accepted, took it in the chin.
Yeah.
I never knocked on a door, and I accepted. But yes, you're disappointed. Everybody is disappointed.
Want to play football.
You want to play football. It's the huffiness that I don't. That I never liked, and I always struggled with it. Not for me, but with other people. They think, I get that you're disappointed and you don't want to play, but it's a team sport. You have to rely on not 11 other players. It's a squad game now. Back in 2002, right on, there was 3 subs. Before that, way back in the day, there was 1 sub.
1 sub, yeah.
So there was a lot more people that never got opportunities.
Is there actually 5 subs now, or is it still 3?
Sometimes it goes 7.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, you can have 7 on the bench.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So different fixtures, 5 and 7. But there's a lot more opportunities to play with no goalkeeper on the bench.
That's
so
right.
and
I
that's
some
why
of them have 2. I see some of the English Premier League fixtures, they have 2 goalkeepers. I don't really understand that, to be fair, but yeah, they do. And then when you're playing out, again, I've actually never been to an Irish League game. Surprisingly, with Billy Joe playing for so long and us being so good friends, I've never been. It was just something that never interested me. I always thought there was too much division. And I was still to a degree think that, but I've never been to an Irish League football game. But when you're playing the big Boxing Day fixture and you're playing in front of, I don't know, 6,000-7,000 people, would that be accurate, or more or less?
Probably is now, but it's rising now. But I remember at the end of that year, 2005, which is now, there's a game now known as Morgan Day, where Chris Morgan scored a goal in the last minute for Glentoran. Us at the time, we beat Linfield 3-2. And that was the penultimate game of the year. So the following week we would have went to Crusaders, but Linfield were leading the league, and they just needed to draw. And it was an incredible game because it went 1-0, 1-1, 2-1, 2 each. And we went 2-1 up, and these were all. This was late on in the game, and I remember David Armour scored a goal over the shoulder. It was an absolute wonder goal, just over his shoulders. Just changed the direction of the ball from about 20 yards out into the corner. It was like, just the air sucked out of you. And then we get an opportunity, and the ball goes into the box, and Pat McGibbon heads it across, and Alan Manus palms it out, and Michael Halliday just taps it in, and that's the game done. And we win 3-2. And that is us going into the last game needing to win, and we win the league. And they were totally deflated, but there was big trouble then.
Yeah.
Fans evaded the pitch. They were fighting.
Was this at your place or?
This was at the Oval.
The Oval, yeah.
Fans evaded the pitch. You'll see it. You'll see the footage on YouTube.
Yeah.
But what a day that was.
Yeah.
I remember starting the game. I played right midfield at the time, and one of my biggest memories is throwing till rolls off the pitch, because there was just an influx of till rolls, just hundreds, and I'm just throwing them off the pitch. And I think there was 18,000. Unofficially.
Yeah.
18,000 at that game.
But that must be an incredible buzz. Like, they come from West Belfast to play sort of grassroots football to then 6, 7, 8 years later, whatever it may be, playing in front of 15, 18,000 people. Like the roar, the noise, every decision that goes against them. It must be an incredible, especially winning.
It is great. I probably played in the bigger game when I played for Antrim Minors against Derry, the Derry team that won the All Ireland, probably about 2002. And Antrim played Derry in the afternoon game at Casewin Park, and it was there was probably more at that fixture than that. But when you're playing, you don't really take much heed of what's around you. You do hear some of the noise. I used to hear some of the chants when I left Glentoran went to Linfield. I heard some of the Glentoran chants from them, and I used to find myself singing them, and then sort of hit myself a dig for how horrible and vulgar they were. But you don't. You're in your little bubble. You're in your zone.
You're there to do a job,
and then you just play. People feel that you play the game, not the occasion, because sometimes they can get big in the big two games. They're hostile atmospheres.
Yeah.
But I love them.
Yeah,
I love them.
I just like I always see like obviously, and you see like derbies, whether it be the Merseyside derby, the Old Firm, the Manchester derby, and you see players having stinkers really, and I always imagine, how could you have, particularly if you're the home team, like how could you have a bad game with that crowd roaring behind you? And but I suppose
it's very easy.
I can imagine. I can imagine. I was never. I played Dunmurry League. I was a hashtag. I got through my last 10 people on the line shooting at me.
Yeah. No, I used to get this psyche in my mind that if I walked off a game, regardless of whether I had a stinker, if somebody asked you how'd you do, I always say run the show. just to get it, just close it. But as you get older, you learn to deal with it a lot better. I remember there's a women's basketball coach called Dawn Staley, and she always had this 24-hour rule. Right. So if you lose a fixture, if you win a fixture, it doesn't last any more than 24 hours. Boys going home after defeats and weekends being ruined, and you have a family and perspective changes. And it used to be the running joke in my home that if we lost a game, Sean's having a migraine tonight. I used to go and lie in the room, and that was we didn't want to speak to anybody.
Yeah, no.
That changes. You be disappointed, you accept it, you reflect on it, you move on quickly. You have to, because there's more to life.
As Mentor used to say, it's only a game.
It's only a game.
So, Sean, we're going to go to a couple. This is my favourite one. I love the quickfire questions because nobody sees these. So these are ones. So just yes, no, or elaborate if you feel free. But the quickfire questions, I've done this with all the footballers we have on. Best player you've played with?
Steve Davis or Johnny Evans?
Okay. Some names are up in there.
I played with Johnny Evans when I remember just before he made his senior debut. He played for our under-21 side. We played Romania, over in Romania.
Right, okay.
I remember there was frogs in the pitch.
Right, okay.
Frogs jumping on the pitch. And he played midfield at the time. And then we played Germany at Moorview Park. And Johnny was probably only 18 at the time, because I think I was 22 because of the way the season went. I was an older under-21.
Right, okay.
And he played, and he was superb. He played centre half that night against Germany. He was brilliant. And then midweek he was called in to play against Spain.
Right, okay.
So he played left back against Spain.
Right, okay.
Up against Sergio Ramos. Took Sergio Ramos off.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not saying he directly.
Yeah, but I know what you mean.
When he was an 18-year-old, just oozed class. It was amazing for him.
Can you spot it? Like, obviously he went on to have a fabulous career in England, but can you spot it at 17, 18? You think he's something different?
Well, you've no idea where he's going to go.
Yeah, but you
saw him and just went, okay, he's different. He's different from us.
Yeah. You just need a wee bit.
And he's 3-4 years younger.
So he's a bit the goal. Yeah. Right, okay. So Steve Davis, Johnny Evans. Best player you've played against in both the Irish League and overall, because I know you've played a few European games, so the best player you've come up against.
I've quite a few. In my time in the Irish League, there's a number of players, there's many players, that made it difficult for me. I was a centre half, never wrestled. Well, I played many positions, but never wrestled because I couldn't, because I didn't have physicality. So Jordan Owens was always very good, just because of how good he was. Absolute gentleman, by the way. The top three for me were Glenn Ferguson, powerhouse, just incredible. Could have played anywhere. Liam Boyce, just before he moved, and Gary Hamilton. And the big thing that, in my opinion, that differentiated those boys from everybody else was they played at their own pace. They slowed the game down when they needed to. They just always had time.
Good players do.
Always had time. And then there's a number of other players that then came into that. Roy Carroll as a goalkeeper at Linfield, in my opinion, is still probably the best signing in my time in Irish League football. He was so good. Yeah. He was so effective and so influential, and such a really nice man.
Again, can you spot the difference in Madoff? Now, I know Johnny Evans is kind of reversed because he came back at the end of his career, but can you tell the way he trains, the way he prepares, that he's played at a high level?
Standards. Aye. I used to love, I hated ice baths, and I never done the ice baths, but I used to sit after training every evening and just sit and talk to him. And he used to tell you stories about playing at Man United and things like that. And his standards were so, he used to fall out with people.
Okay.
Like properly fall out with people.
For now.
I remember at Linfield, before we won the league, he took his gloves off and walked out and said, with no balls. Just walked off training, took off. But he tested people. That was his way of testing people, And there's no doubt that the people on that pitch at that time went, I'll show you. He's so good. Come for crosses, just demanding things off people, just constantly keeping people on their toes. He was superb. And then you've Cam Brass, ex-Newham man. He was very similar to the Boyces, the Fergusons and the Hamiltons. Again, played at his own pace. Probably didn't have the goals that the others did, but Kevin was classy. Kevin looked exactly as he did when he stepped onto the pitch in the first minute, as he did in the 90th minute. And then you have the Paul Heatley's, the Gavin Whites, Joel Coopers, who gave me tough times. Any
particular one stands out where you played in Europe against some of these guys? You thought, oh Jesus, he's just a level above. We
played against Wolves when it was Crusaders. Played against many European teams who were exceptional, but we played against Wolves, and particularly at Seaview. Raul Jimenez played, and I got his shirt, and I've got a framed, actually. It's on my wall. And
there's actually a question come in.
I know who sent it. Yeah. And I can answer that question if you want me to. Are we still friends? The answer is no. We lost contact over COVID. So no, me and Raul Jimenez, we lost contact over COVID. But I remember he scored a goal and he broke his stride to get the shot off quickly. You anticipate to get the leg out, to get the block. He changes his stride just to get that strike off, and that small things like that. They're big impactful differences. He was very, very good.
Yeah, so you knew it was coming.
It was coming. Thanks, Ogres.
Best manager.
God, I couldn't say one because I was so lucky. Somebody put a post on not that long ago, probably about last week, about who was the best manager in Irish League history. And I couldn't say, because I played under Roy Coyle, I played under David Jeffries, I played under Eddie Patterson for what he achieved, I played under Stephen Baxter, played under Gary Hamilton for the successes, Eddie Patterson and Gary Hamilton for what they achieved. So for what they've all done, they were all very, very different, but knew exactly what they wanted, knew how they were going to get it, and got it. So they were all. I'm very lucky. I'm very, very lucky.
Do those people, Sean? So like you hear like the likes of Giggs or Scholes or whatever talking about. Even Roy Keane has said this surprisingly about Fergie. He just knew the right thing to say to you at the right time, and like the likes of Jeffries and Baxter and Eddie Patterson, Roy. Was there any specific time, like maybe during the game at half time before you went for the kick-off, where one of them just said something to you and something just clicked or twigged, or maybe you weren't having the best of game at half time and they said something to you, just got you fired up? Or
I
Or
was
was it
just
just
thinking,
the overall package of everything they've done?
Roy Coyle, I idolise the man because
Mm.
he gave me my opportunity in Irish League football. Very ruthless. Knew exactly what he wanted.
Mhm.
Knew the standards that would be set. If you
Mhm.
drop below the standards, you didn't play. Simple. Somebody else came in. It
Absolutely.
wasn't personal. It was just this
Aye.
is
business.
professional. I need to do this,
Mhm.
and this is what happens.
Mhm.
David Jeffrey's the same. Did it in a different manner where you still felt as if you were brilliant. You know, he dropped you, but and it never happened to me. And this is probably hearing from other people, but I wish I'd had more time, but I only had 1 year with David. I have to include David Healy in that too. That list, amazing for what he's done. But Stephen Baxter used to have these big, brilliant team talks, and they weren't always related to football, but he related it to football.
Yeah.
They were like parables. They were brilliant. But again,
Actually,
ruthless.
yeah.
Ruthless. I remember, I think Stephen Baxter told me to retire 2 or 3 times. Told us all to retire 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
Just emotional.
Mhm.
And I think that's the strength of a changing room where
Mhm.
people can be
Definitely.
emotional.
Yeah.
People can say things that are directly related to a performance. Say exactly how they feel, whether they're right or they're wrong, but this is exactly how I feel.
Yeah.
And just because you're offended doesn't mean you're right.
Yeah.
You know, we have to accept it. We take it in the chin. We move on. We just have to make sure things are better.
Yeah.
I remember he did it at Ballymena. I think Billy Joe might have been one of the ones that he told to retire. He told myself. He told Coatsy. He told he never would have told Chicken because Chicken was a blue eye.
Yeah.
But he told us all, consider your future. Not just at this club, but in football, because that performance is unacceptable.
You're finished.
But the next week we didn't, particularly that year, we didn't really lose
Too many
2 games in a
yeah.
row. I think we finished that season with the most points in, particularly in most recent times of our Irish League history. The most goals. We
So
scored
it
over
worked.
100 goals.
It worked.
Yeah, but it was the fact that he said it. He was very emotional.
Mhm.
He was telling his truth.
Mhm.
And we accepted it. We moved on.
He challenges and you
That's it.
just
Just
step up the challenge.
those little challenges.
Yeah.
Of you have to question yourself before you move on.
Yeah, what have I done wrong
Yeah.
here and how do we improve?
That's it. Self-awareness is a
Yeah.
powerful thing that not everybody has.
No, definitely not. I'm going to throw one at you here. You don't have to answer this.
Okay.
But who's your worst manager?
Worst manager? None of them were worst.
Who was your least favourite?
I couldn't really say because there's not one that I didn't get on with, and I think that I'm older now. I'm 42, and I look back, and I don't think they ever did anything because they didn't like me.
Mm-hmm. It was never personal; it was business.
Yeah, they made decisions because they thought that it was the right decision.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't disagree. I didn't agree with it.
Mm-hmm.
But they made the decision because they thought that it was the right thing for the team. And I'm I played 700, just less than 800 games. So more often than not, I played.
Mm-hmm.
So I was very lucky that way. So
yeah,
I'll sit in the fence.
Best life moment?
Oh God, birth of my children, isn't it?
Everyone
getting
says
married,
that,
death of kids.
But Billy Joe made a blunder in that one. He, I think he said win the Irish Cup. I said, Billy, we're going to cut that out. Do you want to go again? He said, oh, we'll get married. My kids getting born. That's better. So yeah. Just to touch on it, Sean. So obviously you just mentioned there you played just shy of 800 games in the Irish League, which is absolutely phenomenal. To do that for 20 plus years at that level, winning cups, winning trophies, winning leagues, competing. It's phenomenal numbers. I've got some of them in front of me. Before we go into sort of the individual numbers, I just want to go back and talk about, obviously you were at Glentown 11 years, 10 years, 11 years.
I was there 14 years in total.
14 years.
That includes us 15 right up.
And how did that departure, how does that come about? Do you get an offer elsewhere? Does the club come to you and say, look, we've reached the end? How does that conversation happen, or how did that all come about?
I had a number of opportunities before to move to other clubs. An opportunity to go to Derry City, an opportunity to go to Linfield. But I loved my time at Glentown, and it was a brilliant club. But towards the end of that, probably at the start 2012, and I probably rumbled on even before then, where there was just little issues about finances and money. And it wasn't so much about the money. It was the principle around
Mhm.
how it was dealt with and how it was managed. And it was lies were being told, and then all of a sudden it was all put on the players. I believe, and I'm there to be proved wrong, I believe that the club ran the club on the basis that they were guaranteed Europe every year.
Mhm.
And that's not the way that you run a club. And I'm not a businessman, so I'm absolutely a stand to be corrected.
Yeah.
But that's not how you run a club. So they were bringing players in, they were paying them a lot of money. They tried to go full time for a period of time, and that money ran out, and they didn't have the money to pay players' contracts. Now, I was fortunate. I was a teacher at the time. I had another job. There's a lot of players that didn't, that they relied on that sole income. But it was the principle on the basis of the money wasn't there. Then it was our fault because we didn't get into Europe, which yes, we have to accept and take responsibility for because we didn't.
But it's also a big gamble for the club.
But it's a massive gamble. Yeah. It's a massive gamble because you have players here that are relying on a wage. You've made that contract. You've made that commitment to honour that contract. And when you don't honour that contract, then that's a problem.
Yeah.
And then players weren't being paid. They were being told it was coming a period of time. It wasn't coming. Then it was coming, the following week. It wasn't coming. And then that was just rolling on and on and on and on. And there was no real change.
No,
and I do believe that there were people that did come into the club that tried to improve. But the club, in trying to compete with Linfield, put themselves in
big trouble.
Big trouble. Grave difficulty to where they couldn't sustain the club. And I just felt that for my career, I was 29 at the time. I thought, you know what, I've been here a long time. My testimonial was the following year. Many probably would have stayed, and I didn't. I says, no, I want to go now. So I handed in a transfer request at January time. Eddie Patterson was the manager. And Eddie was brilliant. What he'd done with that club was remarkable. 2 Irish Cups. Going through the rumblings of discontent that we all went through, players not being paid, meeting after meeting, the meetings were getting boring because it was the same information every Tuesday night, every Thursday night, come together talking about it. And when you were younger, you used to love those meetings. The senior players, bickering at each other, and you used to sit in the corner and just going, this is unbelievable, this is different. I got bored of them.
When you become the senior player, then it's
the senior player. I bored of it. I don't want to do this. We'll come as a group, we'll agree something, we'll put it in writing, we'll submit it to the club, which is what we always did. We waited for feedback, and there wasn't really much of a change. So I'd made the agreement that, right, I want to move, and I gave it to Eddie Patterson, and Eddie Patterson says, okay, there's a lot to play for this year. I am not going to submit this, but I will submit it at the end of the season.
Stay with and
we did, and I thought that was really good of Eddie, and Big Chew and Tiernan and Seamus who were there, and we won the Irish Cup. So the last contribution of Glentoran was we won the Irish Cup. And I was very fortunate because it won 2 leagues, but it lost the Irish Cup the year after we won the league, which was the year of Linfield's clean sweep.
Right, okay.
And it took me that long to get the Irish Cup because that was the one that was the maw. So it was a relief. And we beat Cliftonville. And they were a team that was going for the double or the treble or whatever it was. And they were a very good team. But we won the Irish Cup, and I left and decided, okay, I have an opportunity here at Linfield.
I suppose it was kind of written well there for it, wasn't it? You were there for 14 years and you left a winner, an Irish Cup winner, which I think you've won 3 Irish Cup. 3, and speak to boys who have won 3, 4, 2, whatever. I'm very blasé about the whole thing. I mean, winning an Irish Cup is, I remember years gone by, and the Irish team would have got a little bit of stick. It was like, oh, it's not a great standard. I'm like, it's the highest standard in the country. Has the offer. Now I know obviously there's more money come into it in recent times with investors and Sky and stuff like that. But I mean, to win Irish Leagues, Irish Cups, County Antrim Shields, I know obviously back in the day with, I think it might have been Linfield, like Satanta and stuff, like them tournaments. I mean, you lads were, and for a long period of time, the best footballers in the country. And people didn't. I don't think people give the credit that deserved. But they won an Irish Cup. Like I had something to say to Billy about it. I think he's 4.
No, Billy Joe's probably got 6.
6 to the
6,
6, and he's just like, it's no big deal. I'm like, I mean, if that was me, I'd be walking about White Rock and Spring Hill with my medals on me. 20, like they wouldn't leave my neck, and he's just, it's no big deal. They're just. But he's very blasé about the whole.
He is, and Billy Joe is very, very humble, and I think that there will become a moment where he is. Well, I'm sure that he is, extremely proud of what he does.
Yeah.
Because he's one of my favourite players in the league. but winning isn't easy,
Yeah, no,
and
definitely.
success doesn't come easy, and people don't see all of the sacrifice and the preparation that goes with winning.
Mhm.
And you get some players that will make the transition to the bigger clubs where is that level of expectation, and for whatever reason it doesn't work.
Mhm.
Because it's not just about being a good footballer.
Yeah.
It's about the psychological aspect of
Being pro.
dealing with difficulties and challenges and expectation,
Mhm.
and dedicating and committing yourself to something that's going to contribute to something big
Mhm.
at a big club. It's not being inconsistent. It's not turning up and beating Linfield on a Tuesday or a Saturday and then going and playing, no disrespect to another club,
Yeah.
on a Tuesday that you're expected to win, and then dropping your standards.
Attitude's wrong and get
That's the problem, and with that pressure and that stress comes responsibility,
Mhm.
and to sustain that consistently over a period of time is difficult.
Hard,
Is very, very difficult,
Work
and
hard
that's
at it.
why people talk about the change in standards of the Irish League now, and the Irish League is in a really good place,
Mhm.
and people criticise it because the game has changed, where it's a lot more possession based
Mhm.
and passing and slower, where 10, 15 years ago it was get the ball forward as quickly
Yeah,
and as
as
accurately
quickly
as
as possible.
possible, and then we play off that.
Yeah.
But I still believe that the best players of 10 years ago, if they were playing now, would still be
They would
the
still.
best players.
Yeah.
So yes, the game has changed, but I still think the best players would be the best
Mhm.
players in their generation
Yeah, yeah.
because of how they prepared. Back then they were part time.
Yeah.
They were working 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock.
I think
They were
home
going,
training.
they were playing, they were part time, but the players at the top clubs are never part time. They're full time.
Yeah, yeah. They're
Everything
always in
about
the gym.
we talked about they're being in the gym. They're missing trips away with their friends. They're missing weddings on Friday evening. Everything revolves around that bubble of match day,
Mhm.
and the life. It takes over your life.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
no, absolutely, and I've seen it firsthand that some of the friends have missed trips, missed weddings, missed nights out, whatever. That me and Billy, I don't think we've ever been to a United game,
mhm,
which is incredible. Like
yeah.
because he's been playing at the top level for the last 20 or so years. And it's as you say, people don't see all that.
No.
But so you obviously left Glentoran on good terms in terms of winning the Irish Cup. You made the move across town to Windsor, Linfield. How was that? How was that transition? Was it just slot in and off you go, or
It was okay. It was fine for me.
yeah?
It didn't bother me in the slightest. I'm quite. People will say that athletes are selfish,
Mhm.
and I would agree with them. Once I made the decision that I was moving, I was completely fine, okay with that,
Mhm.
and I've been like that throughout my career. When I made a decision that it's something that I wanted something to change,
Mhm.
that I could control it, then
Yeah.
I'd never any problem in making that decision,
Mhm.
and I was happy with it, and I was satisfied with it, and that's the way that it was. It wasn't a popular move, which I understand. Glentoran fans are so passionate about their club; they
Mhm.
love their club. They idolise their club.
Particularly Linfield.
That is their life, and it's the same with Linfield
Yeah.
fans. For players that make the transition, on the other way, they adore their club,
Yeah.
and everything is Linfield, and everything is Glentoran, and that's why they've had that big two for so long.
Mhm.
So it wasn't popular. It wasn't happy. They used to sing some horrible things from the stand about my wife, probably more than anybody.
And do you hear these like when you're playing and you're in the zone playing the game and there's 200-300 boys giving you a bit of abuse? Do you hear it?
You hear it, but it's not so much I'm focused on it and concentrating on it.
But you to hear it.
At Glentoran, they used to sing a song, and at one point I found myself hymning the song that they were singing during the game, and then I sort of realised what they were singing and went, "Cheeky bastards, how dare they?" But no, you're focused. You just get on with it. Just people are very fickle.
Yeah.
When you were there, you were a brilliant player.
Now you're the
Now,
enemy.
you're crap.
Yeah.
We're so glad we got rid of you. We should have got rid of you 5 years ago.
Finished.
Yeah, he's finished. He's done. So that's
And
the
what
way
was
it
that
is.
first game back to the Oval like when you were a Linfield player going back to play them? What was that? What was that first game like?
I can't really remember.
Yeah.
It obviously wasn't that big of a deal for me.
Yeah.
It was a game of football.
Yeah.
I was happy to go back and play.
Just to
We were
enjoy.
a very good, strong Linfield team that probably underperformed.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much, but certainly underachieved.
Underachieved,
It was a good Cliftonville team that done back to back. But we certainly should have achieved more. But it was a good side. It's a game of football. It's a game of football. I'm go out, I'll do my best. I don't hear the noise.
Yeah,
I
if we
probably
win,
find
brilliant. If we
if we
don't,
win, brilliant. If we don't, we're gutted.
we'll try again next week.
Sean's coming home with a migraine. Yeah. So
Not talking anybody's
no,
going to bed
yeah,
early.
everybody else's fault.
And then obviously you were Linfield for 3 years. Before we just touch on the cruise, and you headed across town again to the cruise. You've actually got a bit of an international career, which many Irish League players don't have, rightly or wrongly. But you played under 21 international for 11 caps you got.
Yeah, I always remember. I actually got the phone call that it was called in. It was my granny's funeral,
Oh, right, okay,
and we were in the Felons.
right.
And I got the phone call to say that I was selected for Northern Ireland Felons. And my uncle Jared, who had a big career in Irish League football, he was over for it, and I remember them telling about it. And it was one wee somber moment of sort of happiness about it. So I was very lucky in that Roy Miller was the manager at the time, with Alan MacDonald, who was the manager at Glentoran, again, a brilliant man. And I was very fortunate to travel. There's so many places that I never would have. And that's one of the biggest luxuries of football, is that you get the luxury of travelling to these countries that you wouldn't really have afforded to. I've been to every single country in Scandinavia. I've been to so many countries in Eastern Europe. So many countries in Europe and beyond. And it's amazing. I remember we were at Linfield, we went to play AAK Solna in Stockholm, and we went for 5 or 6 days. And
like a holiday.
we used to just go out and just walk about Stockholm and have a coffee, and
all free too.
all free. We're given an allowance.
It's the main thing.
But it was just, had opportunities to travel, and it was great. But it was the same with Northern Ireland. We're a really good side. Sammy Kling and Steve Davis had just made the jump into the first team. But it was great, and it was great to be in an environment where, as a part-time player, you were mixing with at that time, who did go on to be senior internationals. And again, it raises standards. You see how people prepare, how they go about their business. I wasn't a school teacher at the time. I was in university. But this is their bread and butter. This is their everything.
I was going to ask you that. So when you're with those sort of senior pros, you were saying there about Johnny Evans, Steve Davis had just get into the first team, but there was other lads there who went on to have a career. Like, do you see what they do? Do you see how they train, how they rest, how they recover, what they eat, and then obviously bring that back into your own career?
Yeah, you do. But you also see the flip side of how much time they have. And you'll see it now. You see Michael Cargill does brilliant work with PFA. Gambling's massive. Gambling's huge. And irresponsible gambling of people that have so much time, that have voids that they need to fill, and they get caught into little fun card schools. And I remember one story. Wasn't going to name names. Michael Galt. Sorry, Galty.
What a man.
And but I remember Galty getting involved in a little card school with some of the boys who were playing, professional football,
money,
and the stakes just kept raising and raising and raising, and it was getting really worrying for them.
Yeah.
But I can see how quickly people can get pulled into and get caught in to those financial worries. And that's what's in the world. I'm not just saying that because it's something that is talked about. That is a real concern for many young people. What's his downtime, free time? How do they fill that void?
I remember my granddad, God rest him, he go back sort of 60s, 70s, 80s, he would have been a mad gambler, and he says the problem with the gambling, thankfully for the last 40 years of his life he didn't do it, but he says the problem with gambling is you can go in the bar and you can drink 10 pints, you'll fall down drunk. He says gambling are just bits of paper. You can keep going till you've lost everything. He said if you've got £200-300 in your pocket, you can only drink £100 of it. You've still £200 out. With the gambling, you can just keep going.
Yeah.
He says, and it's rife. I mean, I always remember the documentary Gillespie, Keith Gillespie, and he was saying the same, that I think, I'm happy to be still corrected in this, but I think it was a sign-on fee when he left United to go to Newcastle. He already owed it out. he gambled it, and when he got the sign-on bonus, he had to give it
Yeah.
out. So that was them guys at the time. I think they were earning 7-8 grand a week, sort of 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Like
And,
you
and,
should
and,
have
I,
been home in a boat.
and I played with Keith
Mm.
at Glentoran again, another absolute gentleman, and him and Roy were very similar, and they were so open, because they were able to talk about their life experiences.
Yeah.
And fortunately, Galty, he walked away, and it was a bit of fun, it was a bit of crack. But I had to get that in because the first thing he asked is there any point in me watching this? Am I mentioned? So now he has to mention.
We were with Galtley and Billy Joe Stagg, him and Ado, and Carvel
Yeah,
came. It was an experience,
yeah. Oh, good
to
guys.
say the least.
Yeah, good guys. Yeah.
I actually played against him last season. He was playing for the Star, and we played against him, and I was trying to mark him in
Mhm.
midfield, and he turned me inside out.
Galty again
Yeah.
was another player so good.
Turned me inside out.
League player of the year, Billy Joe League player of the year. You don't get that by
No,
being mediocre footballer.
no,
And he spent such a long period of time at Linfield. You don't do
yeah,
that.
no, top club.
He was top
Yeah,
player, top club.
I was trying to sort of. You almost get the same. You're trying to hustle him, so I thought I'll go tight to him. He spun me.
Mm.
I dropped off him. He clipped one with his left foot, sort of 30 yards.
That's how you play Galty.
Yeah.
You let him do that because then he starts to think he's Luka Modric. Yeah.
I got the stage after 5 minutes of marking him. I was like, there,
Yeah.
give me a break here.
Tries to spin things
He
in the
just
corner.
literally couldn't. I tried everything. Like, and as I said earlier, I never played football at any real great standard. Like, but I mean, when you go and play against Galtley, who's a few years older than me, even now he still has that wee turn, that wee half a yard. He was fantastic. So obviously we were at Linfield, made the move back across town to Crusaders in 2017.
Yeah.
17, and you were there for 3 seasons. How was that for you? Was that another culture shock?
It was good. No, it was great. David Healy was manager, and he was brilliant, and he was so open, and again very very like at that time very like Roy Coyle standards. This is your job. This is the standards that I set. If you can't meet them, then you'll not be here.
You're gone.
I found myself towards the latter. I was 34, I think, at the time, and I found myself not playing as much as I would have wanted. And I was playing centre midfield at the time, and that was the time that we won the league, we won the Irish Cup, we won the County Antrim Shield, and at that time there were boys playing centre midfield, Stephen Lowry, Jimmy McGrew, and they were flying, and I just couldn't get in. I was coming in here and there, and it probably just wasn't enough. But I loved it. Linfield, a brilliant club, brilliant people, brilliant staff, great teammates. But I just made the decision, okay, you know what, I'm at the stage of my career where I'm not playing as much as I wanted to. I think I played 30 games that year.
And at that age, and that stage of your career, you have to be playing every week, don't you?
Well, yes. For as long as I think I'm playing well. And when I was playing it, I did think I was playing well. Just at that time, Stephen Lowry and Jimmy Mulgrew, who went on and won the League Player of the Year and was second in the League Player of the Year. So it was fortunately unfortunate, because they went on and drove the team to the league. But I wasn't playing, and I thought I was playing well. So I just had to
make the jump,
just to accept it. You know, it's time to move on. And Stephen Baxter rang me, and I went in and I met him, and I joined very very quickly. Again, a brilliant man. I had the opportunity to go to Ballymena, Brian McLaughlin and David Jeffries. And to be fair, it's one regret that I had, because it was coming towards the end of the season, and with the Irish Cup final. And I didn't want to sign for a club. Brian McLaughlin was phoning me for Ballymena and saying, no, Brian, I'm going to make a decision at the end of the season. And I'd already made my mind up that I was going to go to Crusaders. But I never wanted it announced, because if I had it announced, I wouldn't have been in. Well, in my opinion, I don't think I'd have been in the squad for the Irish Cup in the remainder of the season. So it sort of sits in me a wee bit that I wasn't as upfront, but I understand why I did it, for my own selfish reasons. But you know, I knew that it was going the Crusaders at the time, and I probably just wasn't as upfront and honest with Brian and Davey, and that sort of sits me a wee bit that I wasn't. But I understand why I did it. It would have got out, and then I think that would have impacted, you know, on the end of the season. But I went to Crusaders, and a brilliant club. You know, that Linfield team was exceptional. The Glentoran team was exceptional. So I'll never say that was the best team that I ever played in. But it was just a different environment, because they'd won the league 2 years before. Sorry, 3 years before they'd won it back to back, and then when I was at Linfield, we won the league.
Yeah.
And then the year after, the year
They
that
won
I'd
it again,
signed,
didn't
we
they?
had won the league. We'd
Yeah.
won the league again, but that went right to the wire. It was us and Coleraine back to back. Just every people will say when you're in a title race and you've two teams going for it, they'll ask you, are you keeping your eye on Coleraine? And they'll say, no, we're just focused on ourselves.
we need to-
Nonsense.
yeah,
Nonsense.
you're
You're
watching
constantly
us.
checking the score, waiting for a slip up, and they just kept winning and winning and winning. And we kept winning and winning and winning. And it's hard to leave from the front because you feel that pressure.
Yeah,
and stress and pressure is necessary in life because you don't grow or develop a level of tolerance. So you need that level of
you get
of
complacent
stress
without it, don't you?
and pressure. And they just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And we were exceptional. I went to the final game of the season and we beat Ballymena. And
ironically,
and you beat Ballymena where we were told to retire, just before, and we went 1-0 down, and I think the first 5 minutes I think I had a stinker. I think I made a back pass. Ball was played up, and I tried to be too clever just by glancing it back to the keeper. Was Brian Jensen at the time, and I think Kevin Braniff went through and just missed, or so it was nervy. But we scored 2 late goals. We won the league, and brilliant times. But it was just meeting people that you play against, and I will never judge an opponent because you just don't know them. When they're playing against you, they're out to win. They're out to do whatever they can to win. You hated Coatsy, you hated Chicken, you hated Heats, you hated Declan Cadell. There's a photograph of my mum's house of Declan Cadell stamping on my Achilles.
Yeah.
You hated them. They are the nicest people. Yeah. The nicest people. I remember walking into the Seaview. I walked in the Seaview at the time, and my bag was there, and Chicken says, "Don't want me to carry your bag." And I'm looking at him going, "Are you taking the hand of me here?" But he was lifting my bag, and he is the biggest gentleman, but an absolute monster. Colossus.
Just want to win.
Just want to win. Just an absolute nice guy.
Yeah.
So I loved my time there.
Yeah, just want to win. No, and I think, like I say again, I keep reference Billy Joe because he's the man that obviously I know a bit of insight to, and like Billy is the most placid. He wouldn't talk to you off the pitch. Like there's times me and Billy would sit and have a coffee and he wouldn't talk to me. I know Billy 25 years.
Yeah.
He literally wouldn't speak to you unless you talk to him. And then he goes across that white line and it's like something deranged happens to him. He just turns into an absolute psychopath. And then when he comes off the pitch, he's just normal again.
Yeah. And that's difficult. It's difficult to find that balance. People don't have that switch.
Yeah.
I always felt I did have that switch. People say you've got to be in the mindset and the frame of mind an hour and a half before kickoff. Yes, you're thinking about the game an hour and a half before kickoff, but we're still joking. We're still jovial. We're still having the crack as we're going out onto the pitch. And then literally as the white line goes, it's not easy for people to have that switch. Some people don't, some people do, some people can't accept people that don't.
It's work time.
But that's it. It's just you cross it, bang. And he did have that.
Yeah.
But Billy Joe had that mentality always. He was moan and he gurned, but because he just wanted to win.
Yeah.
But he was very calm, very chilled, very relaxed. And that's probably why he was so good.
Yeah, he probably didn't let the occasion and things get to him. He's even now he's the most chilled out person you'll ever meet. Even when you're out for like a beer with him, it's just it's the same Billy from 25 years ago or whatever.
Well, I always thought Billy had levels to go.
Yeah,
I remember we played against Wolves and I spoke before. I'm nearly certain that it was him and Diego Jota.
Okay.
They were having a bit of a ding dong at the time. I think Diego wasn't happy with how Billy Joe was handling him because he was showing him the respect by being as professional and as strong and taking the tackle and hitting him a tackle. And I remember they having a wee bit. And I remember Billy Joe having the ball and coming out from the back and nutmegging him. and I just remember in that moment, and very rarely you can ever enjoy a moment because you're in the moment. It's not until afterwards or days or weeks later where you can sort of reflect on it and go, wow, what a time that was. But I always remember sitting back going, but that was just a wee level, that he could have went to. And I always think that he could have just went that level.
I think so too. Yeah. I always say to him, I think if he had have dedicated himself really fiercely to nutrition training, we were saying earlier, Billy was the worst trainer ever, but he's going to absolutely love that Jota story. So
maybe not. That was his personality. He was very relaxed, didn't take anything too seriously.
Yeah.
We always had that mantra: never too high, never too low. And he was like that, and I think that was his way of handling things. Some people get too tight, too anxious, too worried, too stressed, and then it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
He never seemed to have that. He just always seemed to play with the same frame of mind, the same mentality, the same personality,
very level,
and that helped him. Yeah.
Because
you see, a massive bag of a 2 litre bottle of Coke and a packet of Monster Munts. That was his pre-match probably. but that worked for him.
I've never seen a man eat sweets like him. I don't know what he's like now, but God, years gone by, he was mustard. But I know you're saying there about players like Billy and stuff, but I also know guys like wouldn't play anywhere near the level you played at, but like play for Newhill. And you know there's certain games you can't put them into because they'll just lose their head and they'll boot all around them. And that's good to a degree because you got somebody there who can leave a boot in and sort of drag people through. But when you're getting red cards, it's no good. So you need that sort of level, when you're getting into the cauldron, whether it be a Boxing Day derby or a cup final, there's no point somebody getting in and booting all around them and getting red carded.
There has to be control.
It has to be controlled.
It has to be controlled because you're playing a team sport.
Yeah.
You've 10 other people. You've 15 other people. You have a manager that are relying on you. And, and if you make that silly decision, which happens all the time, it happens all the time. I've done it myself. We've all done it because we're human beings. We make mistakes.
Yeah.
There has to be that level of control because you are playing in a team sport and you're relying on everybody else. And that I think that's probably the biggest strength of so many of our successful teams was the fear of letting your teammates down in the pool beside you. Because we had that strength.
Yeah, no. Yeah. Right, Sean, I'm going to read some stats out to you. These are, please correct me if I'm wrong on these, but these are incredible numbers. 779 caps in Irish League football, 4 Irish League titles, 3 Irish League cups, Irish cups, 17 games in Europe.
Probably a bit more. I don't know what the numbers were. Actually, I used to have the joke that I never done prelim rounds of Europe. I was beyond that. I always went on holiday. I was a teacher, so we always went on holiday the first week of July. So people would say, well, I said, I don't do prelims.
It's below me.
I do first round proppers.
Yeah. I've got one here. I don't know if this stat's right, but please correct me if I'm wrong. You played 4 in the Champions League qualifier, Europa League qualifier. You would play Wolves, wouldn't you?
Played Wolves in the Europa League. We played Champions League. First year Champions League I scored. So that's one of my kind of famous scoring Champions League. Don't tell people that.
I'm amazed it took you so long to bring that up. Actually.
Yeah, but people say to me, who was it against? They get all excited and I go, Shelburne.
Shelburne. You still scored, mate.
What a Shelburne team, by the way.
Yeah, there's not many people
can still score in the Champions League.
Yeah, incredible. I mean, just looking through them numbers, obviously you played at the highest level 23 years. 23 years. I mean, it's incredible to do any sport at that level for so long, but like to hear them numbers, it must be nice to hear, to be fair.
It's I think everybody, first and foremost, and I hope Billy Joe does himself and others do, I think you have to be proud. You have to be, because you give so much up. But you just don't impact yourself. You impact everybody else. My wife, my family, my mum and dad. I remember it was my mum's 50th in Caulfield the day we won the Irish League in 2005, and I remember it just popped up for 20 minutes and then left again and went and partied, and my mum was just, go and do your thing and amazing. So you have to be very proud because you're not just doing it for yourself, you're doing it for everybody else that contributes to that. And we moved house just before Christmas, and I'm in the process of doing my garage, and the garage is like a wee man shed. But I've framed shirts and I've framed jerseys and photographs of all my teammates and winning the trophies and just lovely
good
times.
memories. And you're saying probably in a few years' time when you're a bit older and you've stepped back a few years from it, you can sit back and think, you know what, that wasn't bad.
It was. I loved it. It was worth it. And we're very, very lucky that we do get the opportunity to go out and do what we love and to be paid for it too.
Exactly.
And people
getting 6-day holidays as well.
6-day holidays. All expenses paid.
Yeah.
But traveling the world, meeting people that you never normally bump into, playing in packed Molyneux's, it's amazing. It's amazing. Nothing beats training.
Yeah.
Sorry, nothing. No, I hate training. Sorry, nothing beats playing.
Yeah,
nothing beats playing. Nothing beats the change room. I was listening to. I know you've announced Sean McComb coming on the next couple of weeks. I know, I was listening to their podcast and some of the high levels of inappropriateness, and I was in tears laughing because the changing room is the changing room, and it's synchronous. You don't talk about what goes on in the changing room, and it's the one environment where you can be somebody else.
You can be safe,
and it's safe. It's fun. Nobody's getting hurt.
No video phones.
and they are the funniest times, the funniest moments. And I was laughing my head off at Sean and Sean McComb talking about it because they
Sean's man.
They talked about it, and in 2 years from I stopped playing, I played 2 charity games, the same charity game year after year, and I have no plan to play in any. But after watching that podcast, I actually thought to myself, do you know what? I miss it. I miss it. That podcast made me miss it just because of how fun. Just recalling the teams are in the fun.
Especially when you're winning too. I always think it's. I think
it's a great game when you're winning.
Yeah, it's not so good when you're not winning. No, I think it's any game is good when you're winning, but particularly football. Having obviously mentioned about for the the podcast we've been talking about all the highs and the successes and those numbers I've read out. Any regrets? Any point of your career you think, oh, I should have done that different, should have done it better, I could have maybe pushed to go across the water, or are you happy? Are you content with what you've achieved?
Yeah, I am. I don't really think too much of the regrets because it doesn't serve me any purpose or any good. I was very lucky in that I won a league with Glentoran, I won a league with Linfield, I won a league with Crusaders, done the same with the Cups, done the same with the County Antrim Shields, played with brilliant footballers, played with brilliant people, was managed by stars of the game. I had the opportunity to represent fans, to play for their clubs. I went to Glenavon and I loved it. They were so good to me. No, I'm very, very fortunate. I'd rather look at it all as glass half full than any way else. I'm very fortunate, very privileged. Loved every moment of it. My family loved every moment of it. My dad was at every single game.
Wow.
It was his journey. He has all the medals. He looks after the medals. He has them. People say that they don't count their stats, their numbers, the medals they don't count. We're different. We're different because we take great pride in it. I think every player that does achieve something should take great pride in it because it's not easy. And success doesn't come easy. And when you have those moments and you're able to share it with your parents and your family and your friends, cherish them because you need to get to watch Billy Joe.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the thing is too, mate, the amount of things that I've watched or listened to online over recent years, and like the amount of plaudits online from fellow pros about you and what you've achieved and the type of person you were, type of player you were, like it's like you watch it, probably for you to listen to it or watch it's probably slightly embarrassing, like, but they all say the same. Sean Ward, to play at the level he played for so long, he was a Rolls Royce. And I would probably agree with that. So,
well, thank you.
Well done.
But it's no, very lucky.
Yeah.
Very, very lucky.
Brilliant.
Worked hard, but very lucky.
Yeah. One final question. You've now retired officially. Any plans for after retirement? Any plans to go into coaching, or are you just happy to get a break and happy with your job and your family life at the minute?
No, I'm enjoying the break of two boys, Caleb and Cohen. Caleb's 6 and Cohen's 3.
Keep you busy.
Cohen thinks he's 6. Wife at home. We have a new house. I'm a senior teacher in a school in Craigavon. It keeps me busy. So I watch all the games. The Irish League is my league. I love the Irish League more than any other league in the world. I watch it as much as I can. I get the opportunity to do some work with BBC, which I love. I pass on some information, whether it's right or it's wrong, with people for as much as they're willing to listen to me. But when you play the game for so long, I think for anybody that has played the game for so long, whether I agree with them or I don't agree with them, their opinion is murdered.
Definitely.
So I think I'm afforded that opportunity, and I enjoy it, and I love it. So right now, no, unless Caleb joins a little team,
just happy to
and I get roped into it, and then I'm one of those contradictory parents that's shouting on the sideline, screaming, shouting.
You're the parent that the coaches hate now, are you?
I'm the one that they're bringing the sideline banners back out, and they're asking me to take a week off.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. No, here there's a few of them, but I suppose if somebody has played it for so long, I suppose you're entitled to. But Sean, we've came to the end of it, end of the podcast. Thank you very, very much for coming on.
Pleasure.
Fantastic story, some brilliant stories and some brilliant tales to hear. So thank you very much and best of luck.
No, Brian,
thank you.